Hey, good evening. My name's Amos Ebersol. I'm currently the chair of the Elder Board, and on behalf of the Elder Board, I want to thank you guys for taking time to come out here. Tonight, we just want to discuss the vision, what we see as a vision for this church here in the next months and years to come, and also get your feedback on some ideas that we've had and have been talking about for quite a few years as far as, where next when all these pews are full. So appreciate you coming out, and I just want to open up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for each and every one, each member of this congregation and what they bring to this church. Thank you for each leader on this, on our elder team. And Lord, we just want to pray that you give us a good dialogue, allow us to hear well, allow everybody to articulate their thoughts and on this matter well. And we just pray throughout these trying times that we just continue to grow as a church, grow in unity, and that we can work together towards a common goal and bringing people closer to you. We thank you for everyone, and we just ask that you bless each and every one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Amos, for that. I appreciate seeing you guys, and those on Zoom right to my right, welcome. Good to see you guys. Hopefully you can hear okay. Thank you everybody for being here. I've got a thing on my ear. Appreciate you guys tracking with us with these masks here today. Hey, Amos, I really appreciate your prayer. I love the way you said that we can pray for, that we can hear each other well and process well right now. So we're excited about what could be a GPC, and I think right now, one of the reasons we wanted to have this time in the middle of this pandemic to talk about this is to say, where should we, if I can allude back to Sunday, we want to keep our eyes up to where our help comes from. But what does that look like for the mission of the church in a very practical way to continue to pursue things that don't keep kind of distracting us? There's enough potential division in our world. I'm not going to cover all of what that is. That can kind of get us sidetracked. And we find it to be very important to say, right now especially, how can we keep our eyes up on where we're going? Things that are mission and vision critical for Grace Point Church. Some of you have been around for a long time. Those who have a longer history at GPC know that we've been through various ups and downs in the history of our church. And I think our best times are times when we can keep focused, almost a laser-like focused on mission vision as we care for one another and listen to each other well as we try to process what that looks like in the best way at GPC. So that's what we're hoping to do tonight, to lay out some ideas. We think we have some pretty fun ideas about what could be and where we're going, even in the middle of a pandemic. It's going to be some good stuff, I hope, to get our mind off of that alone. And then some good discussion. So the way tonight will work is we're going to have a presentation, probably we're hoping in the 20 to 30 minute range for a presentation. And then we're going to have part two of our meeting, which would be a conversation. And the conversation will be a chance for you to break down into smaller groups and go to different parts of the church. This is going to be play along tonight. And you'll be with two elders, who will be just guiding your discussion around what you've heard and how you want to react to that relative to the mission of the church. And then we want to come back to this room and kind of report in what we have heard so that we're making sure that we're hearing you well on what you're saying in this process. So that's where we're going tonight. So we're aiming for about a 3.5 hour meeting. We think we can pull that off without too much trouble. We think we can pull this off in about 90 minutes, but let's see how it goes. We want to hear you well, and we want to kind of lift our eyes up together on where we're going, okay? So with that being said, did I miss anything, Greg? All right, great. Can I confirm somehow, if you're on Zoom, that's okay, Jen, you can leave it there. If you can give us a thumbs up or a wave to just confirm that you're hearing us and you're tracking along, that would be helpful so we don't go too far along without that. Okay, I'm getting a couple of them. Super. All right, thanks and Jen is kind of babysitting the computer here tonight. We're grateful for that. Well, we have 4 things to talk about first and then a 5th thing. So two pretty cool ideas that we're excited about, especially. One is, if you have any history at GPC, a long time ago we bought rental properties when we needed to, part of the reason for buying them is we needed, what's the technical word? Maybe you can We needed green space thank you, so that we could have the parking that we had. So we just bought them, not because we wanted to get into the rental business. And a while ago, we were like, how can we be more strategic with the usage of this space that we have? And we have 2 rental properties that face Route 30. And as we looked at those, we have said from a long time ago, wouldn't it be great if we could use those for a more strategic ministry purpose? And the answer is, well, yeah, it would be great if we could figure that out. And then we talked about what would that look like for a transitional housing or some kind of strategic partnership. And we always had that kind of on the back burner, but never really was able to move that forward to say, what would that look like at GPC? Because we recognize that would take some manpower that we don't have. That would take some staffing expertise, et cetera, that we just didn't have in place to pull that off well. Well, with the relationships we have in the Together Initiative Network now and with the factory, just in the past month, the factory has learned that they've received grant money. Long story short, they've received grant money that is available now to help them for this year and into next year, potentially after that, to get off the ground, kind of a wraparound full service for the most vulnerable women and children in our community for a type of transitional housing, for allowing women to come into this home, one of our homes, be there for 6 months, maybe to a year, and be supported by the factory ministries to launch and move forward. And as we looked at that, we're like, this is a cool opportunity. And believe it or not, then our home became available. We have 2 homes. One home became available July 8th, maybe just this past week. And we put a hold on that as we begin to pursue this space of stepping into using this property for ministry use, in a way fulfilling a long-term underlying goal of what would it look like for this space to be used for greater ministry purpose. And so as we're doing that, we're pretty excited about that. We don't know what's going to happen with the second property yet because it is currently occupied, so we still need to talk about how best to do that. But as we look forward, we can see a long-term vision for these properties to be more than just rental income for Grace Point Church, but to be a key part of a broader housing support for people who are, particularly women and children, who are the most vulnerable in our community. So we're really excited about that partnership. One of the key things about that is that it also helps it doesn't come at cost to our budget, in that we enter into a lease agreement with the factory. So they pay per month whatever we say, kind of, not whatever we say, but within fair market value. What that means is we will be receiving income from that property. And as we realized that, we began to ask another question, well, how can we leverage that income for greater ministry purpose as well? So if we get X number of dollars a month, what can we do with that kind of doubles our fund, so to speak? And we began thinking about an idea that was kind of put in our minds maybe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I forget where it was, when Greg and I had the chance to visit a conference in Kansas City. But there's a group out of Fresno, California that runs something called the Spark Tank. How many of you all ever watched the Shark Tank? Yeah. So think Shark Tank except from a Christian perspective. Think young entrepreneurs in our community. If you're a business leader or know someone who's in business or has interest in the business world, the Spark Tank idea is the idea of creating a structure to support young, budding entrepreneurs who have an interest in creating something, whether it's a landscape business, opening their own coffee company, whatever it might be, allowing them to create a business plan to submit for approval, gathering several, whether it's CEOs, CFOs, business leaders in our community who are Christian businessmen and women. They become kind of a panel or a support structure for this group. They vet these business proposals and then provide 1 year of mentoring for a new young professional trying to get off the ground that has particularly Christian business focus, a faith-focused Christian intentional mentoring for developing economic sustainability within our community. And so as we think about this, we're like, well, why not? Why not take what is available in these homes, use them for ministry purposes right now, and then why not take some of the resources and say, well, what if we could turn that into something that could really create great returns in our community and create a space where those who would not have the capital necessary to start their own business, but need something, or just need a push to say, maybe I can do that, and need support for a year to do that, why not give that a run? And so we started talking with the factory about that as well. And as we were talking with them about that also what came across their path was the chance to talk with Assets down in Lancaster about that as well. So that is an idea that is moving forward. If that interests you at all, the idea of businesses, business leaders, helping to develop some of the next generation toward the idea of economic stability and creating a workplace in our community that is framed and shaped by strong Christian business leaders. I mean, I would love that. I would love to see that space be occupied and developed by and supported by people who have ministry or business experience with a faith background. So those are some ideas. The house thing is this moving forward. We're working toward the other piece as well. All right, so I'm gonna share two more things, and then I'm gonna pause for questions for clarification. So would you join me in putting your hands together for Carla Neff? Carla, yeah, wants a round of applause. No, thank you. Carla, thanks for being here, Carla. Carla works physically at the factory, but is employed by the factory.
By the factory, and it's funded through the factory, the school district, and through CAP, which is Community Action Partnership, based in Lancaster City.
So Carla, is a part of GPC here, and really grateful for your heart and the energy that you have. And we have two more opportunities that we're pretty excited about. One that we've been talking about for a while, and that is, if you've been here, you've seen us talk and kind of go back and forth with mentorship opportunities in our community. We've talked about that. We've actually had presentations from the front about how can our church connect with people, particularly students in our community, who need mentors and need that kind of next step of what could be. And so we're excited that, again, the timing seems really good, even in the middle of a pandemic, to say, there's something here now that you've been working on that can, I think, take us to that next level of readiness, where we might even be looking at volunteering and participating in a mentoring program that's designed for our kids in this community. So can you talk to us about that for a sec?
Yes, the mentorship program that we are looking at the factory for, specifically, we're looking at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade elementary students, is an idea that was developed not only by myself, but from admin from Pequea Valley, who are so engaged with the idea of mentorship, but not just anyone coming in and mentoring, but people of faith is something they truly believe makes a difference. And I think that just speaks so much that it's that collaborative conversation. So it's, we call it the Brave Buddies mentorship program, and it's actually something that was about to launch right before COVID, and so we didn't actually have an in-person mentorship happen at all, but we actually currently have 3 mentors that are doing virtual, like Zoom mentorship, and now have met a few times in person, social distanced, and we're hoping to, in the fall, depending upon exactly what school looks like, to have more mentors. The school has about 40 kids that they would love to have mentored, and what it would really look like if, again, depends a little bit on what things look like in the fall, but it would be Tuesdays and Thursdays, either after school or in the evening, meeting weekly for 8 weeks in the fall time, and then 8 weeks in the springtime, and just being available to listen, to offer feedback, encourage. We have goal setting, academic, and a big part of what we do in the mentorship program is there's a book that we use. It's called the Big Life Journal, and it really helps. Even with me, sometimes working with a student, I have a few that I've gone through the journal with, and it just does some silly questions. Would you rather, go to the beach or the cabin, and just have silly things to engage conversation, but then has stories about, okay, well, this person went through a really hard time and made a mistake, but what did they learn from it, and all about growth mindset and things like that. So it really walks you through, even if you feel like, I have no idea what I would talk to a 3rd or 4th grader about, that journal really helps you walk through it. So that's what the mentorship looks like. And my heart behind it, I mean, obviously it's something that I feel really passionate about. It's something that you can take the gifts that you have and the stories that you have and things like that, and kids love that. They love to be engaged with someone that wants to listen to them as well, and I think that has a lot of power when we step into that. It's scary, but it's very cool to see.
Because a lot of us don't feel qualified to be a mentor.
Right, right.
And that, I think, is a big challenge. Like, well, I don't know how to mentor someone. How do I talk to a kid for X number of minutes in a day? But you're saying there's a structure that can help us.
Absolutely.
There's curriculum that can help
Yes.
us. Like an 8-week deal, is that kind of what we're looking
Right,
at?
8 weeks in the fall, 8 weeks in the spring. Again, that's what we are putting out on the table right now. And the qualifications for it's open not just to Grace Point members. So we have even some teachers that are interested in doing it, like staying after school, because they know that, okay, if I can mentor one student. The qualifications are we want people to be 16 or older. We do a background check. We have about an hour-long training to go over just some guidelines and things like that. And then, again, have the curriculum to follow.
That's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be cool in the fall, especially to say, hey, there's a way for us to get connected and help. I know Pequea Valley has said how many kids have not engaged. About 25% of the kids have not engaged in online learning in the past whatever. So there are kids who are falling behind, and so the building of relationships there it's invaluable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, so the mentoring piece is number 3. Fourth thing, and then we're going to take a quick pause. Fourth thing is related to that, and it's actually related to a physical space at the Together Community Center. So I'm not going to steal your thunder, so tell us a little bit about that.
Because I get so excited. Many of you have been to the old Paradise Elementary building, and the back end, so not the first hallway, but the second hallway, there's 2 classrooms in the back that we are starting renovations in the next few weeks to create some office space for the early learning workers. There's a lady from CAP that right now works in like a little office that's a closet with no windows. So CAP's helping to fund her office area, and we're getting offices. And then a learning center, which will be like a really fun family room, education feel room. So it'll be cozy, but it'll also be a space for kids to hopefully to have this mentorship time in it. Also other programs that we do for elementary kids can be used in that space. So we have different people coming together to work on this, but there will be opportunities coming up in the late summer and fall to help paint, to help we want to build new closets, new like storage for toys. We're putting in a Lego wall, hopefully. So there's some really fun ways to get involved. I know we weren't able to go anywhere this summer on any of our trips, so it'll be a way very locally to get your hands dirty if we want to do that.
Yeah. And that is a key thing. We know that we had to cancel all of our mission trips this summer.
Yeah.
And this is just a small way to say we can get involved locally and helping in a pretty strategic way. And look for that. That's coming late summer, early fall, probably.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a few months away, but I still love what's behind that. I love the idea of what's going on with that. So that TCC, Together Community Center, Braves?
Brave Kids Learning Center.
What she said. Okay. So these are some things as we look in the course of the next, let's say, 12 months, as we think about what are some things that we can keep intentionally putting our eyes on. They're not everything, but something we can keep intentionally putting our eyes on to say, this is an expression of how GPC can engage in our community. Here's some ways that we can work together to make this happen, and some ways that if you want to, you can volunteer and participate in a couple different ways, from volunteering and mentoring to doing the construction project to talking about the business piece, or even engaging in relationships with people who come into our homes who would be vulnerable women and children as well. So I'm thrilled with those things. So I'm going to pause it right there. Carla, do you want to just hang for a minute in case there's a question for you? I know you would love to. I'm going to pause it just for questions for clarification. If you can muffle through your mask, or if you have a question on Zoom, maybe you can type it up and Jen will read it if it comes up. But are there any questions for clarification on any of those things that we just mentioned? Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as of right now, do you not collect rent from the houses?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We just haven't been strategic in how we're using it. I mean, it's coming in, so we're getting rent from those homes, but as we began to rethink their purpose, we began to rethink what is the best way to use those funds. Did you have a follow-up you wanted, Justin? Or?
Well, I'm just wondering what, I mean, we have money coming from it.
Mhm.
Obviously, I assume that money is getting used somehow now. Just what's the difference there?
My understanding is that money isn't included in our budgeting, but it is extra. And be careful how I talk about this. So, Greg, you may have a better way to speak to that. So all that I would say quickly, Justin, is when this opportunity came up, we began rethinking how best to use that money.
Yeah, right now, the money goes into separate accounts, like it's not... Right now, yeah, that money goes into separate accounts, and then for repairs, there's some roofing that needs to fix, there's stuff. And we want to still keep some, money in that for repairs and such as well. So we'd have to, kind of set a limit of what we want there. Are you taking a picture? Seriously? Come on. So yeah, we would want to make sure we have a balance that it's still kind of carrying itself. But yeah. Right. I mean, that money is cash that comes, to the church, but it's really set aside and really just saved on that. We have used that as almost like a reserve, like just when our reserve gets low, we're like, well, at least we still have that money over there, in case we need to use it. So we have used it in that as a safeguard, but it's kept separate at this point.
We don't think that those funds will fund, that's really cool. I have no idea what you're doing over there. We don't think those funds will fund the entire idea around the business entrepreneurial development piece, or Spark Tank, if you want to call it that. We think that can be seed money. We want to engage business leaders to increase that pot and to buy in if there's money there. So we think that'll help with some of it, but it won't be the entirety of it.
If there are other questions, if you could repeat the questions.
Oh, yeah. Did they hear that question? Did everybody? The question was simply, Zoom people, if we are currently getting money from the properties and where we're using that. So hopefully you can figure that out from my answer. Good. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. Good. Any other questions for clarification on any of that? Yeah, Janet.
So the Spark Tank idea is geared toward helping people who are moving out of poverty or looking to build a sustainable income for themselves.
Yeah, the question is, great question. Great question. Yeah, the question is, what is the Spark Tank's target? Who are we aiming for in this? To be honest, right now it's open and needs to be focused. So it's an idea that needs more direction. That's where we need more conversation with Assets in Lancaster and more conversation with the factory to develop that. In Fresno, it's very focused on those who come out of prison and have a hard time getting work. And so they're very focused on helping in that space. They've seen about a 66% success with their business ventures, where the average for an entrepreneurial startup is around 33%. They've seen that over a 5-year plan. The structure for this is actually already built, so we don't need to create something out of nothing. The framework, the mentoring, the Christian business mentoring piece already exists. The handbooks, if you will, exist. The framework for submitting a business plan exists, and what a 1-year mentorship would look like exists. So the framework is built. We would just have to ask the question, what is most strategic for our community here? Is it, let's say, Pequea Valley grads in the last 5 years who are young and starting to get going? Is that who we want to focus on? Is it people who are coming out of prison? Do we want to focus on that? Is it people who meet a certain household income threshold relative to poverty? So it's a great question. I don't have an answer to it yet. That is one thing we need to nail down. Appreciate the questions. Okay, any other questions on those? I can see the enthusiasm on your face. See what I did there? Actually, I can't, so anyway, except on yours, Greg. I saw something on yours. I don't know what that was. Carla, thank you so much. Can we thank Carla? I appreciate that, Carla. Yep. All right. Well, Greg, you ready? The last thing...
You're not going to get him to clap for me? Like,
no,
what? Like, ouch. I mean, I got feelings too.
Don't care about clapping for you at all.
Apparently not.
So we want to talk about how GPC can organize and kind of move forward from here. Whoa.
Yeah, I think my mic was echoing there a little bit too, so that probably wasn't helping
Okay.
them at all. Hi, Zoom people. And those watching
I'm
online
not sure it's
later.
going to make them better if they're closer to me, but there's not much you can do, Jen. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Good to see you. So, yeah, we want to talk about what is the best next steps for ministry development and growth at GPC. And with that, we are thinking through, like, for us, kind of the North Star for us is the mission of Grace Point Church, developing fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And whether we like it or not, we tend to follow that mission statement backwards. Fully devoted followers. You can't be devoted to something until you follow. So we start with, who are the people who are around us who are outside of faith, who are not yet following Christ? Because if we don't connect with those who are outside of faith, there's nothing to develop. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So then we go from there back to, how can we help in discipleship? How can we help in connecting and devoting, assisting in that space, and then into leadership development with our language around fully. So we want to help with leadership development, with discipleship in the church. We also need to help with how are people outside of faith connecting. And it's that piece in particular. As you think about trying to frame up, how are we even thinking about this? It's around, how do we carry on the mission of the church in the most strategic and intentional way that we can, relative to how we talk about mission at GPC, fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ? If people aren't following, we can't become a disciple. So this piece on outreach and thinking about how we connect with those outside of faith is driving a lot of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg, let him talk from here for a little bit, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, sounds good. Actually, could you turn that speaker that's by your foot around towards your computer? Because the worship team probably doesn't need to hear themselves tonight. That might help the Zoom people there. Yeah, so, I mean, basically the question is, we'll there was some handouts there that we, hopefully you saw in your emails, but we also have them here that kind of walk through a little bit of this as well. But we kind of wanted to talk through it, and then, like Tim said, we're going to break up into groups and then kind of, some feedback and discussion, and then come back and kind of make sure we're listening well and hearing well from you, and kind of go from there. So, the first thing is, this is not something that we've set in stone by any means. This is not something that we feel even that we need to fight this battle. Like, this is nothing, it's more of, hey, it seems like God might be doing something here. This is something we've talked about. If you've been part of our vision meetings for the last probably 3 or 4 years, this is something we've been talking about. We know that we're hitting our ceiling in the different areas with the facility here, and so what are we going to do about it? And no one wants to do anything about it because it's we don't want to, but we know that it's there. It's the elephant in the room kind of thing. And so we've been kind of kicking it down the road a little bit. I know I talked to some newer people, and they'd be like, well, yeah, you guys have been talking about this for years. Like, when are you doing this kind of thing? And it's like, we don't want to. We love the way it is. We're comfortable with the way it is. But also recognizing that, hey, this is a ceiling that we continue to bump against. This is something we, as a church, we continue year after year kind of to hit. And, looking at where we're at now with the pandemic, with what's going on, maybe God's doing something. Maybe we should at least have the conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's at least don't just ignore it. Let's at least talk about it. And that's what we're doing here. Look at my notes here, make sure I don't. And basically trying to remove any barriers for ministry growth as we talk about what is our mission statement, our vision statement, and what kind of barriers are in that way and how can we remove that. And one of it is the facility, the parking lot, our sanctuary, our kids' men, even our adult spaces. How would that grow, and what options do we have to create a system that can grow in a healthy way, in a good way. As far as why right now, like why in the middle of a pandemic are we talking about 2 services? Like, this is crazy. Well, some of it is we're kind of finding ourselves as staff, especially, with what we're feeling is what is the healthiest as far as socially distanced and all that. It's kind of, we're kind of operating under a model of two service or a multi-service model rather than a single service model by, well, if we can get two services, we can fit 200 people in here. So let's offer that as an option. Basically, how can we get people in the room? So we're kind of finding ourselves actually starting to operate and think a little bit as a multi-service ministry, more so than a single service ministry, simply because of the pandemic and the restrictions and kind of where we're at in that. It also, this pandemic gives us an opportunity, a very unique opportunity, to really just experience and kind of play around with things, because let's face it, none of us knows what's going on. None of us knows what's going to happen this fall. None of us knew a year ago that we'd be sitting here with masks on and watching online. I mean, this is crazy. But the slowdown can be a great thing. We can be seeing that as well. Maybe God's doing something. Maybe God is already starting to prepare and move us into something that we knew maybe we should be talking about, but we didn't want to. And maybe this is something that God's, leading us into. And so, we have this opportunity now, because we're kind of slowly coming back in, as far as if people feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable, that we can experiment with some of these ministries rather than having our full 280 people here, all the ministries happening strong, and saying, hey, you know what? Let's try next week to go to 2 services and throw all the ministries, or like, what in the world are we going to do? How are we all do this together and all that? And so in some ways, the pace of this time could be an opportunity for us to kind of explore this in a way that would be more difficult, more painful, maybe even down the road. But yeah, that whole idea, is God up to something? That's the question. I mean, we can walk away from this and say no, too. And, we don't, we're not trying to push anything here. But we're just wondering, is God up to something in this? The whole idea of organizational change, if you study any of that, you have the larger the organization, the harder it is to shift and change and turn. And we're already going slow because of the pandemic. Is this a time that maybe we should be considering other models of discipleship, of church, and how we do things that could potentially be more healthy for us down the road, or not? Another reason, like the rate now, is we find ourselves, especially as staff, this is an elder decision, but as staff, we're finding ourselves a little bit of like, what are we kind of phasing back into? Because like I said, the pandemic is kind of forcing us to rethink how we do ministries and rethink things. And then it's like, well, are we trying to then gradually get back to a single service model and discipleship that way for kids ministry, for student ministries, for adult ministries, for church service, everything? Or are we thinking this might be a 2-service thing because we have to do 2 services, or that seems like a great way to get everybody in the building, and we start, are we moving that direction? So even as we're trying to start plan for the future or down the road, or how we even want to start re-entering into things, we're finding ourselves as a staff kind of asking the elders, like, hey, could you help us with this? Because it could be a lot more efficient if we know kind of maybe where we're headed to kind of structure our re-entry into that. Now, it's a very fair question to say, okay, well, what happens if, and probably this is even extremely likely, that we come out of this COVID, whatever that looks like, and our numbers are low. Like, we could fit everybody here. Like, we're 200 people. We don't know that. We could be at 300. We don't know, but say we don't need to do that. Is this still a worthwhile conversation? And that is the question. Is it worthwhile to still have this question? Is it still a model that we would look at and say, you know what? Historically, we run up against that number, we're going to hit it again. So let's go ahead, and even if our services post-pandemic are only 200 people, it's still better to have 2 services of 100 people and grow that it's scalable, than to go back to 1 service, a single service model of discipleship, and then build that, and then 6 months later, 9 months later, be like, oh, okay, now we got to turn the whole ship, and let's have the 2-service model or a multi-service model in place. So those are some of the things that are fair questions. There are pros and cons to any type of change, and like we said, no decision is made. We want to have the conversation. We feel that it's a time to have the conversation about this. One thing I want to also reiterate, we do not see this as a automatic growth catalyst in the sense of, wow, if we go to services, we're now going to have 400 people here, and that's going to be more ministry, it's going to be more finance, it's going to be more, but, having 2 services does not guarantee growth. Growth comes through the quality of the programs, growth comes through the relationships, growth comes through that kind of stuff. But can we remove the barrier, the physical barriers that we have to help with growth? That's kind of more of the question. But it's not like, we don't feel like, okay, well, if we go to 2 services, we're going to double our church in a year. Maybe, but maybe not. Like, it's not an equal thing that happens, the 2 together. But we feel that it could remove that barrier that, would limit us from doing that. So we have a couple, options in front of us. We have one thing is we can do nothing. I mean, that's an option. Like, we don't have to make this decision. Like, we can just keep going with kind of the information we have and just kind of trying to make our best decisions on ministry models and continue to move through the pandemic. We don't have to do anything. We can choose to table this discussion and say, you know what, there's so much change going on, let's just get back to normal, something normal, please. There's merit to that. So, we could table the decision. But I think we want to at least, and that's what we're doing here, and we'll thank you for coming, we want to at least have the conversations and talk about it. And so, with that, what could a multi-service or for us, it'd be 2-service, what are some options? And you have the paper in front of you. What are some of with all of them, there's opportunities, there's challenges, there's pros, there's cons, however you want to word it.
I can't hear you.
They can't. I'll keep talking? Okay. With everything, with all the options, there's pros and cons. So, we realize that, we recognize that. So option 1 would basically be take our service that we love. We have our Sunday school model and our worship single service model. Take that and just move it to another night. Move it to a Monday night, or move it somewhere else. Or even the church plant could fall under this idea. We could decide or talk about the idea of, hey, once we get to 250 people average attendance for 6 months, we're going to ask 75 people and we're going to bless them to go start another church somewhere, a sister church or a satellite church, and we'll try to help fund some of that and they can kind of start their own thing. So that is another model that could be used in keeping that. There's challenges, obviously, with that. We think that most people would still rather come to the Sunday morning service here, especially, if it's a Monday night, which might be great for people who have weekend plans, but not everybody. And what do you do with volunteers? What do you do with, worship team? What do you do with kids, men? Does it become kind of like a front porch where you have a 2-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old, and, here you have them for an hour. Good luck, Katie. Have fun with that. There's some challenges with that, which she loves it. She just takes it all on. She's great. So the volunteers would be kind of a challenge with that. Not impossible to overcome or at all, but yeah, we kind of feel like Sunday morning would probably still be the strongest experience for kids, men, for everything, and so people would be still coming to that, and we'd probably still be hitting that barrier, our physical barrier here. So that is a challenge that we see with that. Our second option is Tim's going to talk about, unless Tim is...
Second option, absolutely. I'm talking about it.
Oh, you attaching the document?
I'm just trying
nice?
to share the screen quick. We're going to share
play
this
some
with
intermission
our...
music there for a little bit.
Share this with our Zoom friends. All right. Thanks for your flexibility. All right, Zoom friends, hopefully you're seeing the screen. You're going to... see option 1 and 2, and then if we can scroll down to option 3 in a minute at the right time. Sorry for the distraction there, but thanks for the flexibility with everybody. Option 2 is the 2 services sandwiched by Sunday school, and that is in your handout. And if you don't have a handout, appreciate you guys getting them. Does anyone else need them while you're up? Okay. Super. All right. So it is what it sounds like. You have a 9 o'clock service, 10:15 Sunday school, and 11:30 second service. The thing we like about that is you get to keep the Sunday school hour as we're used to it. That would be a win, to be honest. And then keeping 2 services on one Sunday reduces the need to have another volunteer team. That's just the bottom line. You don't need a whole other group of volunteers. They can just kind of do that at one time. The major challenge that we're struggling with on this one is that we'd have 1 hour where we'd encourage everyone to be present. And our parking lot and building can't handle that if there's growth. So to put it another way, as we continue on that, the only way this is successful is if that middle Sunday school hour as an adult discipleship model fails to attract the people and they don't come to the 10:15 hour. Meaning, if we see growth at, let's say, 9 and 11:30, we'd have to say, please don't come to our adult discipleship model at 10:15 because we can't handle everybody. The problem we're trying to solve is we have a facility without enough space to handle that. And so we kind of need you to come with your car. Not sure why I'm fading out
while
here.
you're breaking up there.
We need you to come with your car, but then we need you to leave with your car before the next group comes with their car. And that might be a really simple way to put it. But because we have a parking problem and we have a facility limitation problem, and so the sandwich model of putting Sunday school in the middle or anything in the middle, where we hope if that model is going to attract, if that's going to be where we're going to bank on adult discipleship happening, then we need it not to succeed in the long term, at least not to succeed for the new people coming. If we're okay with the new people coming who don't engage that way, then we can do it. But that feels like a rough idea to do that, and so we're struggling with it because of that space. So that's option number 2.
Yeah, and another, I guess, part with that facility limitations are, okay, well, let's sell this building and just buy, a $14 million building or build something. I mean, that's an obvious, easy solution if someone wants to donate $14 million. We still, even if we could do that and say, have a building that fits 500 people, okay, well, at some point, if we still use a single service model, hopefully we'll hit that 500 mark, and then what do we do then? And so it's scalable to the facility, but it's not scalable beyond the facility. And so just kind of wanted to throw that out there too, as far as when we're talking about facility limitations, it's not just easily solved. There's pros and cons to even if we would move to another facility. The third option, and that's kind of the one we're kind of throwing out that, we're kind of experiencing right now a little bit more and kind of feels it might have the most traction, pros and cons all exist as well, is the 9 o'clock service and the 11 o'clock service, or we're just throwing those numbers out there. Basically, you want to try to keep it as close as you can that we can clear the parking lot without, saying, thank you for coming to church, now leave, please. We still want to be nice to people. But the idea of having 2 services, identical services, having kids ministry also happening during that time. So you would come in, the kids would have their own version of worship, their own, stuff geared for their age. The adults would come in, have big church, and then the family would leave together. So that would be a way to do that thing. Some of the opportunities with that, it's very scalable. It solves a lot of our issues. Basically, we could double all of our ministries fairly easily. The children's ministry could even expand further into the fellowship hall and kind of use that even as their junior church area, kind of a stage, kind of create a little bit more of a worship experience there for them and a larger area for them to use. Since adult ministry would have to find some other way of happening in this, option, I guess, which the adults would, have to find something, whether it's home groups, small groups, cell groups, whatever you want to call them, whether it's men's groups, women's groups, whether we offer hey, Tuesday night we're doing an 8-week series on the book of James starting this week, and it's for adults, and come Tuesday night, and that's kind of that medium group feel. We listed out the core values and the heart of discipleship because we still believe strongly in the importance, especially under relationships and teaching, the importance of a large group, medium group, small group, and friendships. That we feel that is extremely important in the life of the discipleship of a believer. It's just that medium group, small group, Sunday school thing. They would have to happen in another way. There's value in that size group meeting together. We don't want to lose that. We want to provide opportunity for that as a ministry. But what that would look like would look different than what we're used to. pros and cons with all that too. I mean, if you're able to meet during the week, it's not just, hey, I do my spiritual stuff Sunday morning, I'm done. It's like, hey, Wednesday night I have a time of refreshing, getting together with my friends again, and we talk, and there's that throughout the week kind of thing, and we're not under a time constraint of, hey, the bell's ringing, we got to get going kind of thing. So there's advantages and disadvantages that we would have to work through in that. But we feel that another opportunity, it's really the most efficient way to use our volunteers and resources. Using the building, using our volunteers, the time that they would have to be here for a lot of the volunteers would be about the same amount of time as now. Like if you're a greeter, you would greet for the 9 o'clock service, stay for, hang out in between the service, and then greet the people for the 11 o'clock service, and 11:15 you can leave. Worship team, there's models there where they can leave after their worship set and the closing song is done by a small group or something like that. So there's ways that we could use our resources a little bit more efficiently under that. Same way with the resources. If we do like a Monday evening service, okay, well, when does that worship team practice? And they wanted to do something special, so they tore everything down and for their practice, and then the Sunday team needed to set up, and you have resources kind of intermingling with some of the other models where things could stay a little bit more efficient with resources of the facility and also volunteers. There are challenges with this, obviously. It's a different model than what most of us have grown up, if not all of us have grown up and experienced all of our lives. But this idea of, there's something special about sitting with my family, my kids during the worship service. And there's, now I come in and my kids have their own church, I have my own church, and we go home. Like, this feels weird. You could stay for the second service and do it again if you wanted to, and volunteer for the first service, and then you and the family come to the second service. There's different ways of that. But there are some parents that were like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, when my kids are sitting on the bench, my attention's kind of still on them, hoping they're not being too disruptive, and this is great. Like, I can come and actually listen to the sermon, and actually this is good. Like, it's a breath of fresh air, while my kids are having an awesome time geared for them. So, there's different challenges with that happening. Obviously, the adult discipleship, what does that look like if we're not offering adult classes on this Sunday morning? Can they meet another time? Home groups, electives, we kind of talked about that a little bit. We would have room, this room, our Happy Hearts room, we could kind of grandfather them in if we wanted to, because we wouldn't need that space. So, there could be, options that we could look at for some of that transition as well. Student ministry would not be meeting on Sunday mornings. Kevin could speak to this more if you want to talk to him individually, but honestly, they've already been moving to a Sunday evening, kind of that is their main ministry time. And not because of any of this, but because they found that to be the most effective way to teach the kids. And if you ever taught Sunday school to junior high or senior high kids on a 9 o'clock on a Sunday, you would probably say amen to that. It's a tough crowd. So they're already kind of starting to move to that anyway, but that would be something I don't think we really talked about junior high as far as which way they would go, because we didn't want to go too much into the weeds if we're not doing anything. But, and then, the idea with volunteers, and it's honestly, it's this way even now too. If you volunteer in the kids ministry for both services, well then when do you get to go to church? And so do you just volunteer for one, and then Katie has to find twice the volunteers? We'd have to work some of that out. But, how do we get our volunteers able to sit and enjoy the worship service as well? So those are some of the challenges, opportunities of kind of the three leading things. If you have other suggestions, we want to hear them. If there's like, hey, what about this option? This is a discussion. This is not, here's pros and cons. Here's some things we've been thinking. We're open. But I guess at this point, are there any clarifying questions on like those three options and like, wait, I don't understand what you meant by that. If you have like ideas to make them better, let's talk about that in the small group when we break up into small groups. But is there anything that you're like, whoa, you lost me on that idea?
Yeah, because as you're thinking about that, the very next thing that's happening is going to be time to break out from here. This is a lot of information we're giving to you. Hopefully many of you got the letter already and you've seen some of that and had a chance to process some of this stuff. But the very next thing that's happening, we're going to break into groups of it looks like about 15-ish or so. maybe
Yeah.
3 different groups, and then I'll connect with the Zoom folks. We'll talk Zoomies, and then we'll have about 20, 25 minutes for small group discussion or medium-sized group, and then we'll come back here and hear from everybody. So that's the space if you're like, hey, has anyone thought of this new idea or that new idea? We're here just saying, can we clarify anything of what we just presented to the large group?
Mm-hmm.
You did an amazing job.
Wow, I must have.
Thank you for doing that. I hope that was helpful. And Zoom people, you're right in front of me now. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear, and if it's too much? Yeah, I got one from Heather. Heather, you win a prize. Roger's 50 cents he was going to give me. Can come to you. Although Roger just left, so Roger's given $50 to everybody who came to the vision meeting tonight, just so you know. Go ahead and check in with him. Yeah, I got a hand clap from a lot of people on that. Okay. What I'd like to do, just imagine you're in a classroom, we just went to a small group breakout, and now we're coming back and reporting in. So I'd love to hear how this went. Our goal is just to hear and listen to what's going on. So I'm going to write stuff. Zoom people, I'm turning my back to you. My apologies. But I'm not sure what else to do.
Why don't we move them over here?
They wanted to stay up here to hear better. Yep, that's fine.
I mean, it should be about the same, hopefully.
We're going to move you.
Oh, here, close to you?
Yeah, to here. So let's put them further away. Can you guys still hear okay or not?
Hi, guys.
Okay. Amos, do you want to go ahead and give us your group? Who were you with? You were with Jess?
Can't what?
You were with Jess? Okay. Who's reporting from you guys?
Move over there.
Amos? All right. I'm just going to...
Stand over here and try to articulate.
Yeah. That's going to take a while.
This is going to be fun.
I'm mostly kidding.
So one of the comments that came out, and I'm assuming this.
Actually, yeah, stand there, and then the Zoom people will be able to hear you.
One comment that we had was, and I'm assuming this was in reference to option 3, which would be about the children's outreach and being able to reach children, and what a huge part of the ministry of the church that was.
Okay. That's good. So, I'm really loud when I do that. I need to
Well,
take that
let me
off.
give
Sorry.
you a mic, because we want it also on the recording back there. Sorry. I really don't have to repeat everything.
So let me, Amos, would it be helpful if I go through 1, 2, and 3 in this questions?
It might be helpful, but we never got past question 1.
Super. Well, let's go ahead with question 1 to start.
Yeah. And I don't even remember what question 1 was, to be honest. So I'm giving you what I have written here, and that's that.
So the mentoring piece is what?
Well, about children's outreach, as far as the mission of the church, how important that was, and how huge a part of any ministry that was.
All right. So I'm writing down a positive on children's outreach, and I'm underlining it. No one can read this anyway. Good grief. You can't even see what I'm writing, can you? I'm sorry. I promise you it says positive on children's outreach. We're going to keep this around, which is why I want to record it. Go ahead, Amos.
Another comment we got was the possibility of a different type of model. I know we haven't really specifically talked about a church plant, but the fact that we have 2 services might enable some level of a different type of model to potentially reach people that wouldn't come to a typical service.
So would this be another model that we haven't laid out in option 1, 2, or 3? Maybe there's
Yes, I believe so. In relation to something similar to a church plant, yes.
The church plant with Yeah, just for the recording. I mean, the idea that, it could provide a greater opportunity to create maybe a different service, almost like we were doing Front Porch, something geared a little bit more towards different demographics or different experiences.
There was a comment made about with where we were prior to disrupting or old normal, how the connections class was instrumental in getting to know people. The comment was made, I don't know how we would have got to know everybody as fast as we did if we did not have the opportunity to sit in there and hear people talk about their life story. And how not having that setting would, we would need to find a way to replace something like that if we did not have our current Sunday school hour.
All right.
Yep.
This says connection class is great for connecting, and there's a loss if it's not there.
The question was asked, what percentage of people prior, back to the normal, were staying for Sunday school, and the fact that that percentage was somewhat low, would that allow for a continued class in between services?
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit because that came up in our discussion as well. We have about 90 adults in our give or take kind of thing that are involved in the adult Sunday school class ministry. And with that 90, out of 270 people, now a lot of people are volunteering and such as well. Even in that, again, with our facility, if you're in a Connect group, you're in a group of about 50 people. If you're sitting in the back, it's hard to hear. Like, we were running out of room even for adult ministries as well. So while the percentage might stay about the same, any exponential growth could be problematic from a facilities point of view. But yeah, just to give you some numbers for that.
Yeah, and what I wrote down here doesn't make sense the way I remember the question, so I'm just going to speak generally. The next couple were about the difficulty of, I guess it was geared more towards the relationships that were currently in place in Sunday school classes, especially with having small kids, the difficulty of having home groups with small kids running around. And the appreciation for having that opportunity to spend that hour with their peers.
Yeah, young families, Tim, or something like that.
Yeah.
The idea of, a peer.
And then there were several comments, some fairly extensive discussion on, continuing with some level of a hybrid of that Sunday morning group. Like, the word grandfathered wasn't used, but we talked about grandfathering out here. Was there the potential to do a small level of grandfathering elsewhere
For
that Sunday school hour as we currently have it?
Like for young parents, like have a young
Right.
parents class that could meet during that
Right.
hour. Not full-on adult ministry, but that also came up.
Right, and then as potentially as those parents move on to a different part of their life where that's not as effective, they
We
could
want them to kick
potentially
them out.
transition, kick them out.
In the most loving, godly way.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm writing down challenge of losing Sunday school for young families and the question of can home groups work, and then could Sunday school groups be grandfathered in?
Yep.
What I'm writing.
And then there was a question if there was any consideration given to an 8 o'clock and a 10 o'clock service instead of the 9 and 11 option.
Which time again?
8 and 10.
8 and 10 service.
Okay.
As long as you get your worship team here
8
by 7.
and 10 o'clock? 8 and 10 o'clock?
I just lost all our
just
volunteers.
because.
Yeah.
The question was asked, was that discussed or considered?
Okay. And 10 o'clock an option.
Jess, did I miss anything?
Just on the hybrid approach, I've written down, talked briefly about an option where you potentially come to the first service into a small group environment and then stay for the second service or vice versa.
You're going to get to say all that again, Jess.
It was just one of the things that was mentioned kind of while we were talking about the hybrid approach was the option to potentially come to the first service and have a small group environment in that service and then to stay for the second. I think we didn't really talk about it, but I think that the challenge with that would be the gap in between.
Could some come for one service for a small group, I'll say, or a Sunday school class, And stay for the second? Was that what I'm hearing? Yeah. Just a quick thought around that. The challenge, one of the problems we're trying to solve is parking space and physical space. So to have, anytime we will have one car for both services becomes a challenge. We're not necessarily solving the problem, we're not in the long term, it's a challenge. It doesn't mean we can't think through it, but just it's a challenge.
Yeah, the only other thing would be, the question was asked, is this the right time and the right place? Have our lives been disrupted enough already? Can we get back to some level of a new normal, and then as the need drives, consider this at a later date? And that's all I had.
It's a good question. So I'm writing down, is this the right time? Hopefully that catches what you're saying. I appreciate that question.
Kevin, did you want to, are you Katie? Well, Amos, they don't clap for
You didn't get
No,
anything,
your group,
Amos.
I tell you, apparently, what's up with that?
Yeah, I got some kind of rude welcoming.
That was from him.
Heckling in the back.
Hey, you take it easy, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, so we I'm going to start with where we ended our discussion because I think it was a strong place. We talked about the importance of understanding our mission. Like, yes, we've talked about mission and vision, but we all need to have clarity around that in order to kind of buy into what we're doing and knowing the direction that we're going. Like, what is the mountaintop that we're trying to reach? So, what is our aim? And we talked about, okay, so what is our mission? Well, it's about being disciples and developing disciples, and it's that three-part piece of our mission and vision statement to develop fully devoted followers of Christ. And all three of those components need to be given attention. So if we're just looking at our outreach, we're missing two components. If we're just looking at our discipleship, what's happening in-house, we're missing the outreach. And we had some really good discussion around that. It was positive. I don't know how you're going to summarize that, but just the importance of clarity around mission.
That's perfect.
That is perfect. Good job. And then, so we talked about what's the most mission critical to Grace Point Church that fits in line with the mission and vision. How to better utilize our assets, not to be focused only on money, but how to leverage the assets that we do have for the sake of the community, and to be impacting the community in a real and tangible way. That was something that was really encouraging for our group. Keeping our eyes up on our mission instead of being self-focused. That was also brought up by a couple people in our group, and that was a strong statement to say when we're looking up at what we're aiming at, or the mountain that we're trying to ascend, then that takes the focus off of ourselves, and that's really helpful, and we thought healthy. And then to align with the town square vision as we are kind of defining our aim, that image we kind of agreed as a group is really, really critical. The town square image, because what we have is Route 30, a road. We don't really have a physical town square, but when we start working to piece together those different organizations, different businesses, different, the medical community, all of those different components, that begins to develop I don't want to say virtual in this season that we're in, but virtual town square in a sense. So, then what things could take us off mission? We said if we're just thinking about money only, or money coming before ministry, like we're seeing, oh, we have some assets, let's let those those funds dictate kind of what we do and the decisions that we make. So we thought we need to keep in focus that the mission comes before the money. That's one of our values. And something else that could derail us is wanting to stay comfortable and in the status quo. Pushing back on change of any sort could get us off focus. And being solely focused on numbers. And the numbers are important. They're an important data point for us to have. They tell a story, but they're not the only thing. So we talked a little bit around that. And then lastly, it seems like a natural process coming out of this COVID season to consider moving to 2 services. That was the feel from our group. Did I miss anything? Okay, great.
They're going to clap for you, I have a feeling. You know.
Just for the sake of clarity, in that group, just so you can hear what I wrote down, what I heard here and I wrote down starting here, that there's an importance of clarity on mission for focus, so we want to keep our eyes up. How we use our assets to impact the community is important. The town square image is key. We want to keep ministry before the money. We don't want to stay on the status quo or get too comfortable. We want to be careful not to focus on numbers alone. And it seems like a natural process to talk 2 services, or maybe natural time is a better word for that. So that group, does that sound like we captured your thoughts? Okay? Okay. All right. Appreciate that. I'm going to get a clean sheet, I guess, Greg and
Yeah,
Brad?
well, I'll start off just to give a feel, an example of what it's like to lead any organization, because our group was totally opposite. No, especially with the timing. There was some talk of the idea of, is this the right time? Should we pause? There was a little more of a feeling of maybe it's better to pause and maybe even take some more polls, like, hey, would you come if this? Would you come if that? If we did 2 services, would you come? So a little bit of let's get more data. Let's maybe pause a little bit on that. But as far as mission critical, I think one of the things that kind of came up in our group in different ways was, kind of what Kevin had said about keeping the balance of inside, deep and wide, keeping that balance in perspective. We talk a lot about our missions. We talk a lot about what we're doing outside and not losing caring for one another and inward discipleship, feeding each other, not just through serving, but other ways. What do you think could take us off a mission? I think the concern was a little, again, with the small children, families with small children, and losing the ability to provide healthy discipleship environments for a young family who I promised I wouldn't use the word free childcare because Katie's in the room and that would really bug her. So, because it's a ministry opportunity, it's not childcare, right? So yeah, but that idea of losing that opportunity to disciple young parents, and also even that then forcing, we brought that as one of the challenges, but forcing that, I can't sit in church with my kids, and even some other people that don't have kids, it's like, oh, it's nice to see families sitting together and worshiping together. I like seeing that, even though it's not me. So, that feel in that environment. As far as suggestions, the hybrid model came up, or the young parents class idea, which was brought up before, about can we grandfather families that have small kids into some kind of way that they could get that discipleship, or even have a controlled electives environment where if we're saying, parking is our issue, well, if it's not an issue right away, can we have signups for that? And have a controlled sandwich approach that it's, and if we grow out of that, we just have less, we don't have room to have those electives anymore. So pros and cons to that, but almost like a hybrid approach there, a controlled approach. That's kind of a general.
Let me go over this and
Brad,
see if,
am I
oh, you're good,
out of
Brad?
there? Kind of.
See if this sounds good to your group as you're thinking about if it's, I wrote down, is now the right time. We want to keep a balance of deep and wide. We could lose discipleship opportunities for kids.
Parents with kids. It's more of the, I mean, the kids are fine. It's more of the young parents who can't do a Wednesday night or do, you know, the other.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's helpful, yep. Could lose discipleship opportunity for parents with kids. We like seeing kids in the service. We wonder if there's a hybrid model that we could do with maybe family with young kids being grandfathered in. And is there such a thing as a controlled sandwich approach?
Yeah.
Your group, that sound fair? Fair representation?
Yeah, we want the kid, like, well, that was, we like seeing him in the service, seeing the service, yeah, 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 we want to see, having to make that choice,
The choice between Sunday school for the kids or sitting in church.
right.
Okay.
So it's kind of a sub of that, we want to see the kids in the church, in the service, it's kind of, yeah, the parents have to make that decision, right. Or Rachel said since she has a baby, she would love to stay for both services and just do it all.
That's great. Your husband could probably
Did I
build
represent you well?
a shower
No,
in here.
no,
We could have you
no.
stay all week.
Yeah.
That's helpful, thanks. Okay, thanks, Brad. Okay, is that good for your group? It's a good capture? All right. Zoom group. Yeah, thank you. Zoom group, we've lost some of you, but thank you for those who are still with us here. I'm going to get my notes. Our Zoom group, we talked about number one, we had a couple people, 2 votes for housing is awesome. They were very excited about what could be and wondered why we were in the real estate business for so long, and this is pretty cool to be able to do something intentional with those houses. So that was pretty cool. We got another, hey, this is pretty cool with the spark tank idea, kind of out of the box thinking. We got a strong reaction toward that of, you know, out of the box and cool stuff there. That was that. We also talked about there's a loss to adult Sunday school potential change. I mean, it just, we've been used to it, and it's easier on a Sunday to keep doing our thing that we're used to doing, and it feels like a real loss to consider having that be gone. And the question was, is there a way, I put A and way together. Anyway, is there a way to keep some kind of medium group was the question.
Did you just crack yourself up?
I did, it was pretty funny.
Okay.
We asked a similar question about the sandwich model, like, can we, do we go with it? This is, I don't like the sandwich, what we keep talking about. Do we go with a sandwich? I don't know, what kind of sandwich do you want? Anyway, do we go with sandwich and then
A Oreo approach.
and build from there?
Now we're talking.
Build from there.
Double stuff.
Can we go whoopie pie? Can we do that?
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
can we,
All right,
can we go
yeah, we
whoopie
can-
pie? Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, we got a hand clap from Heather. Thank you, Heather. What were you clapping for, Heather? For the or a
Oh,
thumbs
you're
up
looking like that really threw me off. Heather?
on the Oreo? Oreo? Yes, recaps are helpful. Oh, Alicia. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Okay. We also identified there's a challenge to our schedules to do oh, hold on. Yeah, to do another night.
Whether it be adult ministry or whatever,
Right.
just period, just we're busy.
But then we also had a, Derek, we had a good, I'm going to summarize this as good time or great time to go out of box and deliver brand new discipleship opportunities. What they're saying is the church is more than just Sunday morning. And how do we as Christians exercise our faith in the week, in the day-to-day? And the church is growing beyond just the need for Sunday morning alone. And the way that we conceive of being Christian and the way that we conceive of discipleship could or should embrace some of our current virtual or digital platforms that we're learning about even now, and could be a new way for us to think there's another way and new ways to engage people that actually could be even more productive. I'm trying to summarize that in that. We had a question again on what will adult discipleship look like. Discipleship final form. And then again, a recognition of loss of kids not in the service would feel like a loss. Feel like a loss, and I think that's a lot of it. Zoom group, you guys can help keep me honest here. Hopefully you heard all that. Heather with a thumbs up. Is there any more in there?
I don't see any more comments.
Alicia with a thumbs up, thank you. And E with a thumbs up. Not sure who E is, but E. That's E? I don't know. All right, that's good.
They don't even go to our church, but that's okay. I'm kidding. We did pick up a lady from Arizona for about 3 months who was filling out the connection card every week and just loved everything going on with our church until she realized that it actually wasn't her church. Because she signed up for the live service, like she wanted to come to the live service, and it's like it's a long flight, but you're welcome. But I think you have the wrong church.
There's a Grace Point in the vicinity where she lived.
Right, and
We're not in the vicinity.
So apparently she doesn't know her pastor very well.
Was she give?
She did not give. We actually did check to see. Yeah.
That's funny.
Because then we would have had to decide what we were going to do at that point. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's helpful feedback. Thank you for sharing this for us. Hopefully we summarized what you're saying and caught it here. I appreciate it. We've said as an elder team, we have no interest in jamming anything or ramrodding anything right now. There's no win in that. There's nothing here to fight about in the least, in my opinion. But there is stuff that we can talk about. There's stuff we can say, how can we be intentional and strategic relative to the mission of the church? And that's what we want to do. So we're grateful for the conversation around it, for the hearing on this. What we'd like to do as an elder team is take this, next steps for us is take this as an elder team process, what we're hearing, as well as have a couple more conversations with a couple key focus groups within the church, some key volunteers, within the life of the church. And then we would like to, because at a practical level, honestly, we're a little stuck until we know what we're doing. We're a little stuck as a staff to know how to plan for the future. Like, what are we going to do next? If we go back to our traditional 9 and 10-15, okay, then we should start planning that way. But if we're going to go 2, then we should start planning that way. But the longer it takes for us to figure that out, then the more we are a little bit stuck in limbo, just not able to plan or ask people what to do. You should know, just for the fun of knowing, just because we want to get back to normal doesn't mean we can. Right now, we're running about 65 people in person in these environments here, and I would say easily less than half of the volunteers who had been volunteering are even available to volunteer right now. So our workforce, if you will, our capacity is extremely low. So that's okay. That's not a guilt trip. That's just information for you to know that we're not even really ready from a manpower level to get back to, full-on stuff, even if we wanted to do that right now. And I get that. I'm okay with that. I don't think anyone could have predicted how long it would take or how long it will take to process the season we're in as healthy a way as we can. So we're trying to do the best we can. We're grateful for your patience and grace with us as we do that. So more to come. We hope to make a decision in an ideal world by the end of July, beginning of August, so we can start planning for whatever is next. We don't want to let this linger forever. That's not what we want to do. With that, I think I'm about done. Did we cover everything here, Greg?
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously continue to be in prayer for this and continue to feedback. I mean, our group ran out of time. There's a lot to unpack, and we don't want to be like, okay, well, you had your chance. Like I said, if you have an idea, to our group, I said, if you have an idea, pops in at 2 a.m, call Kevin. I mean, talk to him about it. And, so, yeah, we want to continue that, atmosphere, just, pull us aside and talk. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, even in a small group, because it's like, wait, I had something that was going against maybe what they were saying, and I didn't want to say it. And so, we definitely want to continue to be ears and listen and pray.
Sorry, Greg.
Go, nope, you're good.
We are excited about, especially the first 4 things we talked about tonight. I think those are some pretty cool opportunities to march forward with connecting with our families in our community, connecting with some of the most vulnerable in our community, being intentional and strategic with our assets, our buildings, and that I'd encourage you, if you can, keep your eyes up into some of that area and encourage those around you with that as well. And the 2-service thing, that can be controversial, can be a sticky thing. I just encourage you to keep the conversation going, and keep chatting with us about that. We'd love to keep hearing from you. And again, we want to be strategic and caring in how we carry about the mission of the church. And we want to run everything through that grid, mission, vision, and keep heading that way in as loving a way as we can. So, all right. Yep, I'm grateful for you to being here. I'd like to pray for us to wrap it up, and then we are done. We're out of here. All right. Dear Lord, thanks for the time tonight. Grateful for the conversation, for the chance to talk and to share our feelings and interact with this stuff. What a challenge and opportunity it is for the church to stay on mission through challenging times and hard times now. So we know that so many, even here tonight, and those on Zoom, are facing different challenges and, are feeling some pains and opportunities here and there. So I just pray that you would comfort our church body, comfort those who are impacted in so many ways by what's going on right now around them. We pray that you would keep us as well on mission and vision, that you would help us, yes, to understand what we're thinking, yes, to be able to verbalize our feelings and our pain and our hurt through this. That's very important. But also I pray that you would help us to keep our eyes up to where our help comes from. Help us to keep our eyes up on the cross, to understand and to press forward into redemption and into hope for those who are outside of faith in Christ, who have yet to experience what life in Christ looks like and the hope and redemption that is found there. So I pray that you'd help us keep our true north and love and care for each other along the journey. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate you all.